Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome once again to another Torah Tanakh review. My name is Uzi Alewi. I'm one of the teachers of congregation D.C.B, CHOKMAH, BINAH. In English, that means the house of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And we're bringing you another Tanakh review, another Torah review. First and foremost, giving glory to the creator of heaven and earth, Yehudah, the Lord of hosts, the one who created us all. And we thank him for life, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Secondly, thanking the creator for the leadership of Congregation Bay D.C.B, even the spiritual leader of our congregation, Chief Prince Yisrael Ben Yissaschar. Thanking the Most High God for his life, for the life of his family, his household, and praying that the Creator would bless them and be with him. And also thanking the Creator for everyone on this stream, on this podcast that listens on a weekly basis and appreciates everything that's brought forth. We know that without you, this wouldn't be even a viable thing because you guys are the supporters. So we appreciate all of your support and everything that you do in order to continue to keep this platform going. Also thanking the Most High for this season, even the season of Pesach, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, thanking the Creator for this time to almost like renew our bodies. You know, we get like a refreshing, our bodies get a break from leavening and so many other different things that could affect the body if we overconsume them negatively. So we thank the Creator for this period of time where our bodies could get a break from certain things, digesting certain things. Thanking the Creator for all things and everything. Hallelujah. Giving due respect to my teacher and even one of my teachers and one of my mentors, Nasik Zurishaddai Yehudah, who will be going over Haftarah on the Passover review. How are you, Nasik?
Great, beautiful. Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Telling Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. Due respect to the platform on the spiritual leader, D.C.B platform, Chief Prince Yisrael Ben Yissaschar, to the whole Chief Uziel, to the Prince's Chief, brothers and sisters, Marine, the Rabbinic, Corning, and visitors. I greet you all in the time of forefathers. Shalom Aleichem. And Chag Pesach Sameach, Chag Pesach Sameach. And also have Chag HaMatzah Sameach. And also those that and Shabbat Shalom, early Shabbat Shalom. First of all, I'd like to say, Adonai Seftati Takupi Yogi, Tila Theaka, Olom down my lips, and my mouth shall declare the praise. I like to speak on the season that we're in. And, more so, I know I missed a couple of weeks. I was pretty busy, something when I normally have the schedule set. So I like to apologize, not being consistent because of certain things I had to do, being the season was right there around upon us. And I'm sure that y'all got a lot of good insight to the various congregations that you attend. And even if, you attend the platform or listen to the different programs that's coming from D.C.B and various other congregations, Shemaim and BINAH and et cetera, or different congregations around. I'm sure you got a lot of wholesome information. So all I'm doing is basically trying to, go over some review and possibly highlight some points that might not resonate so readily with every one of us from time to time, because we definitely tend to have a memory of forgetfulness a lot of times. So that's why I always refer to this more as a review for those that consistently study out the scriptures. So that being said, we in this season, one of the most prominent seasons that we call the season of Passover Sometimes they call it the season of unleavened bread. We have several terms it's used and it's referred to. Mostly the most commonly term is used as basically the CHOKMAH, which is the season, Feast of Unleavened Bread. But it starts off with Pesach, which is Passover. And a lot of people, before I even get into it, just so I don't want to be remiss, they don't, some people have the concept that Passover itself is not a feast. But just to alleviate that, erroneous concept that we find in the book of Exodus, the 30, I wrote it down, 34th chapter, the 25th verse. At the 34th chapter, 25th verse, is actually Passover is called Chag HaPesach. So just for a mental note for those that might believe that Passover is not considered a feast, it's actually called that in the book of Shemot. One might argue if it was written in the book of Devarim, or what we call Deuteronomy, that's Moses saying that. But here we know the same Moses rendition when we're talking about the first 4 books. We basically Moses writing down and Helen what the Creator told him to write down. So only in Deuteronomy you wind up from the opening the book of Deuteronomy, you find out, and these are Moses wrote words. So it's now, since we eliminated that erroneous concept that Passover is not a Chag, let's deal with Passover being so great in the sense that it starts at the beginning of the year. Now, we have 2 years that we observe. One is called an ecclesiastical year, which is a sacred calendar, and then you have a civil calendar. And I know one brother, Prince Nat, spoke on it a while back, and I spoke on it in the past, that when we talk about our ecclesiastical calendar, we start with the month of Abib, which is the springtime, which we're into now. So you're gonna hear people say, say Hashana Tobah for this particular time. But also we know that we have a civil calendar, which is in the 7th month, but the years change, the chronological years and the calendars change, which is, they call it Ethanim. And most calendars may put it as Tishri. But that is also a time when we count our sabbatical years. We talk to Yovel and everything. We start a new cycle of rededicating ourselves. So that's always, in the 7th month as respected to the ecclesiastical, but it's the 1st month as respected to the civil calendar. And that's when we talk about civil laws and we're dealing with legalities of property, and civil laws as far as indentureship as well. So now I want to speak on some of the things about Passover. Out of all the other holy days that we observe, other than the Shabbat, you read, we know we observe Shavuot, which is Feast of Weeks. We know we observe Yom Teruah. We know we observe Yom Kippur. We know we observe Sukkot. And as we complete Sukkot, we will go through Shemini Atzeret. Now, what is unique is that Passover, it seems like it's always a new beginning, a new revival for us in that sense, a new rebirth. And when we talk about a new rebirth in the beginning of Passover, that you find that when Israelites slipped up throughout history, the way they try to get back is start the year all correct. It kind of make you think about the New Year's resolution that most secular people in this country, when you talk about January 1st, I got to make a New Year's resolution. I'm going to start off my year with this, start off with that. And I'm going to put away this baggage, their own names, and they sing Old Lang Syne and stuff to that nature. Well, we ourselves, we supposed to become rejuvenated at this particular time of even spring. And Now, the thing Passover, one of the things that I love about explaining about the Passover is that no doctrine that exists in the history of mankind prior to that. Now, I ain't saying they got some other doctrines they made up on later on, but I'm saying prior to this, there's no doctrine where you find a God who people slacked or praying to came to rescue a people because of their ancestors. No doctrine is that. There's no doctrine where you read that a supreme being, a God, go ahead and destroy some of his creation on behalf of a covenant and promise he made for some unique individuals who seem to be insignificant and on a global scale of worldwide population. So that's something to consider. And you never seen a policy and a premise for this redemption as great as this, when it was about releasing the bound, the downtrodden, and other deities, and other ideologies that exist. You don't find out where their deities is concerned about the poor. And the poor is concerned about, hey, don't attack me. Let me see if I could bribe you with my offerings. Most of the things is not to grant me this, but more so to keep you from hurting me with this, and hopefully this is enough to pay you off to make sure I could do what I need to do and be successful. Well, we have a God that came and rescue us at a time when we need rescuing. And that's what's one of the great things about the Passover. We have a God that we most people give credit to a death angel passing through the land of Egypt, but the death angel or the destroyer, as it would be called, the destroying angel was set out there for us, because where each one of our house became a sacred spot, that at that particular time, that if we didn't observe the edicts that Moses told us that God wanted us to do, was slaughter the lamb, between the evening at dusk, and go ahead on and strike the upper and the two doorposts, and then roast the Passover and eat it with unleavened bread, shoes on our feet, loins girded, staff in our hands, and etc. And eat it in haste. That is what the Creator said, when I see the blood upon the doorpost, that I will pass by you, and will not suffer the destroyer to come in there, because he's going to handle the business of taking care of the firstborn. No angel could tell who's going to be the firstborn. But one thing should have been a matter of discussion in various places, that we know you could say my oldest child's the firstborn, but a man could have more than one firstborn. He could have several, in a world where polygamy exists. He could have a firstborn, a pater recum, from 4 households. So now, and also in some societies, it didn't make a distinction whether it was supposed to, the man only had daughters, and she was a pater recum, because it said there was not a household that there was not one dead. So can you imagine how many dead bodies that they have? And they didn't say they had to be a newborn. So sometimes we think about the firstborn being a young baby or infant. You could be 35 years old and your father's alive. And it's always a question that hit my mind, for discussion. You never could really get a good answer for it. Well, suppose you are firstborn, and your firstborn is you have a firstborn son. Do both of y'all check out at the same time? The only exclusion was in a premise like that was Pharaoh. It would be a firstborn himself, but only losing his firstborn son. But what about the rest of the population? If this guy's a firstborn, and you have a firstborn, and his father may not be a firstborn. His father may be a secondborn. So grandpop's still around. So how many deaths could that have been in one household amongst a nation of people? That is a catastrophic, decimation of people at one time, one moment at midnight, where the time is given. I'd like to just also bring our attention to certain things that our liberation is that we have an invitation. Now, I know some people, we know that we're supposed to have lamb, unleavened bread, and bitter herbs. That's the essential for a Seder. Today we have all these different other, customs that exist where people have, other things on the plate. But the essential is those three things: the bitter herb, the lamb, and the unleavened bread. Now, what is so important to consider in the matter is that today, though you might have lamb, it's not the Passover lamb. It's not a sacrifice. Though some people might go through what they would consider a tokenism. I grew up in a situation similar to that, but we never said it was the lamb. We just did what we did because the congregation I come from, which has been in Ziking, we did a lot of stuff for that matter, trying to be ancient, but we know we didn't have people that consider themselves priests. We had brothers that call themselves Levites, but we never had anybody that used the title of priest in our particular group. And they would roast the lamb. We have our lamb, and sometimes they slaughtered their own. Sometimes they just brought it already slaughtered. So that let you know that it's not in conformity to what the books say. And also, it got to be a place where the Creator has chosen, and He haven't chosen any place outside of Israel except 2 times that we read about. And the 2 times we read about is in Egypt, the first one, and the second one in the wilderness where they had the Mishkan already erected. So those only 2 times we read that outside of the land of Israel that they ever observed the Passover with their rites. And it's the Passover they observe in the wilderness is just the memorial of the Passover that they had in Egypt. Now let's look at some of the criteria that, as before I go forward. In Egypt, they never was told to clear their house of leavening. They were just told what to eat. They never was told that they had, to eat the unleavened from that point on for 7 days. But we could, draw that they were supposed to eat the unleavened that night. So you're gonna find some different customs where, that you have some people just only eat the matzah, which you call unleavened bread, that particular night, and then they might eat it on the seventh day, and some customs. I'm not gonna go into it now because I'm gonna be a little bit long in this dissertation. I'm gonna try to be brief as possible, but I'm already see I'm gonna be long because of the magnitude of this particular event in Holy Day. Also, one of the things I like to bring out too is that though you had those essentials, and for those that might follow, a Passover, Haggadah, and have a particular rabbinic style Seder, others want to bring out some things to consider. That normally you say prayer when we making an aliyah and we get ready to read the book, read out the scroll. Even a Haftarah portion, they have a prayer rabbinically you say before and after. All right, just like that. We know that we say, a prayer for our meals, but you only is asked to technically say a prayer afterwards. But at the Passover Seder table, those that might follow that particular approach, when we read out the Haggadah, there's no prayer said in the beginning. And that's something that, to discuss those that follow a rabbinic tradition. Why is it that when they talk about the word Haggadah, which means to tell or narrate, that's what the word Haggadah means, the telling or the narration. So why is it that all the other times we say a prayer before we begin reading or discussing something in the out the Tanakh, whether it's out the scroll when you make the Aliyah, and we start off with a prayer and then we finish with a prayer. With the Maftias portion, those that follow that type of formula, they start off with a prayer and end with a prayer. But when it comes to a Passover Haggadah, we don't ever start off with a prayer, but we definitely end the service with a prayer. So those are some things to discuss, and I'm kind of interested to see what some of your views on that. But for those that follow that particular pattern. Now, it's another thing I like to bring out as well, is that not only the firstborn of the Egyptians, but even against their God. So if a God had, even though they had a statue of a God, and this supposed to be this God's son, that was broken up, messed up, destroyed. So, and that's ironic, and just in that area, So those are some of the things I like to bring out in reference to that. And there's another thing I like to bring out too, that we had a lot of traditionalists in my particular group when it came down to the Passover Seder, or Seder itself means an order. It comes from the word order or arrangement. What we do, like the word Siddur, which is an arrangement of prayers, which we call a prayer book, a Siddur. Same same root. So let's look at a little bit more. What is leavening and what is unleavened? Let's discuss those things, because that's always a topic, and when we have a topic about what is leavened and what is unleavened. Now, granted, we're almost at the end of this particular season, when the season will go out, pretty much, for us the CHOKMAH part, and especially when most of us read. I like to just bring out a point in reference to that, is that when we talk about leavening, well, leaven, when we talk about unleavened bread, leavened bread is really the same bread that's unleavened. All right, so now the bread start off unleavened, and it has to go through a change. So that means that the comments, the actual leavening part of the bread is the same dough that was before. Just that one dough went to another stage. Now, when we look at it's also unleavened bread, and later on in Deuteronomy it's called lechem, which is bread of affliction. But when we talk about leavening, and we talk about what is leavening, now I know Ashkenazims have that means mostly European Jewry, Eastern European Jewry and stuff, has the custom where they don't eat beans, rice, corn during that particular week. So that's what they do. They take a little more stringent. But when we talk about leavening agents, we're dealing with the grain, because matzah is basically a grain, and the grain is basically wheat, but which most bread was made out of. But it's 5 grains that's really mentioned in Israel. And that's mainly Israel's known for, and that's the wheat. Well, I'll start off in this order: barley, the wheat, the spelt, the oats, and it was 5. Now it probably comes to 5. And wheat, barley, oats, spelt, rye. All right, those are the 5 grains, and those are the grains that is capable of becoming leavening. And that means that when water is added to, when they made into a flour base and water is added to it, if it sits long enough, when you mix it with water, it can become leaven. So leavening is, as I know Rabbi Chief and Yamin spoke many times, those that might follow him, that it's something that usually had to be put in, not some, or, you know, I mean, and you know, and or it goes through a change within the actual item itself. So you could take, you know, mostly, well, it's actually just add item itself. Maybe it should be more clear. So that means the same wheat flour that I mix water with and mold it around to become dough-like, that same dough has a chance of becoming leavening. It's not so much even always adding another agent. It's an agent that is evolved from its original source. Now, I know some people might say I might take some spelt comments and put them with some wheat comments, or some barley comments, put it with some, you know, wheat comments. A whole nother story. But I'm saying I'm trying to keep it basic and to the core meaning of what is leavening and how it's understood. So it got to be something that is capable on its own to become leavening, that you keep it from becoming leavening, that you're eating it on this particular time, especially with the Seder. And you must eat that bread at that particular time. The word Masa, as I spoke on before, the first time you hear about that term is in the book of Genesis with Lot entertaining those angels that was sent to rescue Lot and his family from Sodom and Gomorrah. So now I like to bring out this other point as well. When we talk about that, you know, talking about, you know, what they did, they hit the doorposts. That means that the very doorposts of the houses that they live in became a holy spot. And the sacrifice itself was brought within their spot. Now, they didn't have the edict of clean leavening out all their borders. That wasn't part of the prescribed thing. That was something in the memorial that they're not supposed to have leavening in none of their houses in places like, you know, on their borders later on, sending from houses to borders in the land of Israel. But in that first Pesach, that was not a ruling that was made there. Only ruling was eat it, these three items, eat it in haste, dressed a certain fashion way, not so much reclining like we do, you know, those that follow a Rabbinic Seder, but, you know, and that was that. And your staff in your hand, you know, like you're getting ready to go. But the only thing was to eat it in haste. And I'd like to bring out another point without going to the books. I'm not reading this much because I'm trying to be a little faster. So any mistakes, like I said, would be my own. When we got ready to leave Egypt, after Pharaoh, you know, called for Moses and Aaron at night and wanted us to leave, and we're told that we left Egypt in haste because, you know, and we had our doughs in our back, and the reason we had matzahs, unleavened bread, is because we didn't have time. But only thing you find out what we actually did was eat that meal in haste. That first meal, we was told to eat that quickly, not to worry about the dough becoming leavening in that house in that first time. Only to eat that meal quickly. Also, we find that it was the Egyptians that was hastening the children of Israel out, not the Israelites trying to hasten out. Then you read, they took a little time to get some jewelry. But it talks about they took their dough and their kneading troughs on their backs, but they didn't have time for it to become leavening at the time. Now, that's not to say that it didn't become leavening after a period of time, because if they say you had their dough and their kneading troughs on their backs, and I said it don't take long for the process to begin, the leaven. So sometimes we might think, you know, they only ate unleavened bread for that particular time. You know, that depends on how fast they took time out to bake that dough in open fire. And another thing I like to bring out too is that when you add juice, I got matzahs, and so we have different types of matzahs today. And the matzahs that we have today, sometimes people might use juice. Juice can become a leavening agent, but it takes a longer process in the same flour and water. Normally, when you talk about unleavened bread, it's plain unleavened bread. When you add different oils and mixtures in it, it retards the process, but it still can become leavened, but it becomes leavened at a slower rate than just plain water. So I just want to bring those things out, for, discussion amongst the various people. That's why most times at the first night, even rabbinically or tradition I grew up with, we had plain hardcore matzahs. And why, and why is it that it's not called lechem noni at that first Passover, but yet Moses later on calls it lechem noni, which means bread of affliction. Plain water and flour, fried that real quick. Not only it's a humble meal, it's a poor man's meal. And so that talks about your circumstances, technically. So what Moses is telling us later on is that what are we trying to do? We're trying to actually empathize with the event, put ourselves mentally and spiritually in the event that happened over 30-some hundred years ago. So that is why it's talking about lechem noni there. But in the first Passover, all it said was unleavened bread. And it say whether they had plain flour and matzah with nothing added to it or anything like that. So there's always a discussion and debate in reference to that particular area. All right, I'm just going to move on just a little bit because just for the sake of time. And we know that we got the instructions for memorial of the observer for 7 days after that, and keep it in the season. So that means that if you're talking about keep it in the season, that means that we must also adjust our calendar periodically. So I'm just going to move on and go into the Haftarah portion, which is Joshua, the book of Joshua, for the first day of what they call CHOKMAH. Because Passover itself, the actual event of Passover, it only exists from dusk that evening until the sunrise. Then it's changed. The name is called CHOKMAH. Now a lot of people say Happy Passover, or a kosher Pesach, or they might say Chag HaPesach, Sameach, stuff like that, or Chag Sameach, period. All these different terms you may have, but the actual Passover passed by when the sun comes up. That's why the bones and the lamb and everything like that had to be destroyed. So the purpose of the haste is not so much that you're going to leave in a big hurry. The purpose of the haste is that you got to consume as much as you can without being wasteful. And what you don't consume, which is you ain't going to eat bones, is to burn it up before the sunrise. So that's why it was a haste, not necessarily that you're going, you got to run out right away. And that's why you read later on that the Egyptians was urgent and hastening the people. All right, so I just want to bring out those little points there. But we're going to the book of Joshua, the 3rd chapter. We're going to do the Ashkenazi formula, what they do for Joshua, the 3rd chapter, the 5th verse to the 7th verse. And then the Ashkenazi and Sephardic pretty much do the same from this point on, which is the 5th chapter and the 2nd verse, going all the way to the 6th and 27th.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
We're in the book of Joshua, chapter 3, verse 3. And they commanded the people, saying, when ye see the ark of the covenant of Yehudah your God, and the priests, the Levites bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place and go after it. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Come not near unto it, that ye may know the way by which ye must go. For ye have not passed this way heretofore. And Joshua said unto the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow Yehovah will do wonders among you.
All right. All right, go to 5 and 7, those two verses there in that
All
same
right.
chapter.
And Joshua spoke unto the priests, saying, take up the ark of the
No,
covenant.
no, 3 and 5.
3 and 5.
Yes, 3 and 5.
Joshua
Third
chapter 3,
chapter.
third chapter,
Yeah, 5. Yeah, third chapter, verse 5.
verse 5. And Joshua said unto the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow Yehovah will do wonders among you. You said Joshua 3, verse 5. That was it.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I'm behind. All right, go. Go. Okay, go on to 7. Read the 7 in the same chapter.
Verse 7. And it reads, and Yehovah said unto Joshua, this day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. And thou shalt command the
Right,
priests.
that's good. That's good right there. All right, that's good enough. Then we're gonna go on to 5 and 2. But before we read 5 and 2, starting from there, the 5th chapter, and they're going to be in the 2nd verse to the 6th and 1. All right, I'd like to bring out a couple of things here. Joshua first Passover, we did one Passover, like I said earlier, in the wilderness under Moses after the erection of the tabernacle. In the same month the tabernacle was erected, Mishkan, Aaron and them already had been sanctified as Kohanim, priests, and that all the tribes had offered up on their day, which is to finish up the 12th of the month. 2 days later, it's the Pesach, Seder. Now, which is interesting, and it's another thing too, like in the first Seder, they actually had the lamb and stuff on the 10th day of the month, after they're told to observe the month of Eve. So they had plenty of time to prepare, knowing how they're going to eat what kind of bread they're going to eat with this particular lamb. 4 days notice. So hence the qualification, what was the haste and what they meant by 8 certain things in haste. All right, so now when we look at this here, Joshua, with the priests and the ark, when they went across the Jordan, it's reminiscent of how we left Egypt. We left Egypt as slaves. And then when we come across the Yom Suf, the Red Sea, and we come out as free people. So it's a time of freedom and redemption for us. One of the things about, you say, the word kamatz and matzah, one of the things I like to play on these particular words is that the only difference between the 3 letters is that one has one has a hay and one has a chait, right? And a chait is really a close, it's closed, which comes straight up, crossover, and straight down. But the hay itself has an up and a crossover and space at the top and close down. So now when we talk about a freedom, you say, well, what's the difference between the kamatz, which could come from the matzah, is that really when we move out of our narrow space, this one is some of the teachings and allegories behind it, that when we move out that narrow space, that hay that had that open space is open at the top. Freedom, we're not set free just to run amok. We're not set free to do our own. Freedom itself means that you got to move beyond a comfort zone. And while there's space in between, it shows that though you got to come up and try to raise up out of your comfort zone, sometimes you might make mistakes. Sometimes you might blunder. But that means you still ascend and try to ascend upwards. And so the hay, as the matzah, is what really is teaching you how to leave the narrowness, because Mizraim itself means narrow borders. So you're trying to break the confines of your narrowness. And as we're going to see, that there's going to be a similar a rendition in Joshua's time about how the Israelites made their transition from one point to another point. All right, so we could continue there.
All right, we in the book of Joshua, chapter 5.
Yeah, verse 2.
Verse 2. At that time, Yehoah said unto Joshua, make thee knives of flint, and circumcise again the children of Israel the second time. And Joshua made him knives of flint, and circumcised the children of Israel at Gibeah Hadaloth. And this
Okay,
is
I'll right there before we go to the 4th. Now, you know what it says, second time? Now, all us that's circumcised, most of Israelites, I grew up around, that's like, if they wasn't circumcised when they're coming out to themselves, that's one of our signs of commitment, to what we're about. Brothers, go and say, oh, I'm gonna get circumcised right away, and that's laudable. And that's a zeal to try to say, not only I want to be part and parcel to the service of the Creator, and also saying, I got ties to my father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I have ties to the land of promise. So, and I got ties to show that the Creator had redeemed me and wanted me to do something in reference to that. So now, when they told the children of Israel to circumcise, make sure every male was circumcised at the first Passover, that gives you a clue that something wasn't quite kosher. As the Yiddish term is kosher, but the Hebrew word is kasher. So it didn't seem quite kosher if they had to be circumcised then and make sure everybody was circumcised. Here it is. This was with Moses, but now God had told Joshua that this is going to be your responsibility, and take flint knives, stone knives. I mean, what happened to the metal? What happened to the steel? But let's read a little bit further. And there's allegories in reference to that, but we're not going to talk about that now. 4th verse.
Verse 4. And this is the cause why Joshua did circumcise all the people that came forth out of Egypt that were males, even all the men of war died in the wilderness by the way after they came forth out of Egypt. For all the people that came out were circumcised, but all the people that were born in the wilderness by the way as they came forth out of Egypt had not been circumcised.
Stop right there. Important point to resonate on. We built the tabernacle a year later after we started observing Rosh Chodesh. A year later. So is that alluding to that within that first year, no new babies was born amongst Israel? Because we already was a year out. We done built a calf up in 50 days. We had a calf sitting up there, from the time of the Exodus. We had a calf. We got manna in 30 days. So now you mean to tell me that no women and stuff was having no babies until after the Mishkan was erected and after that first Passover? Because when we read this here, this is exactly what it looks like. That nobody had any children for people that was multiplying something like animals, that they all of a sudden not multiplying for that first year. Because it said all those that was born in the wilderness. And we was out there a year already. But you wouldn't have kept the first Passover not being circumcised, and that's the only Passover recorded in our history. So that's just something to consider and discuss with your various teachers. I continue.
Verse 6 reads, for the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness till all the nation, even the men of war that came forth out of Egypt, were consumed, because they hearkened not unto the voice of Yehoah, unto whom Yehoah swore that he will not let them see the land which Yehoah swore unto their fathers that he will give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. And he raised up their children in their stead. Them did Joshua circumcise, for they were uncircumcised, because they had not been circumcised by the way.
Keep going.
And it came to pass when all the nation were circumcised, every one of them that they abode in their places in the camp till they were whole. And Yehudah,
Okay. All right. Now, this is after they had crossed over in the 10th month. So, like, we had the lamb prepared for us on the 10th day of the month, and the first Pesach, and that was a sign of liberation and redemption. Here, we just crossed over into the land. So now we need to have a sign of not only liberation from Egypt, getting away from the boundaries, but also a sign of redemption as well. And so, and just here that's why I say a second time, compared to the first mass circumcision that was done in Egypt, this is the next mass circumcision for the children of Israel. And a lot of questions could be raised about that, but I'm not going to speak on that, on this setting. But so we're going to pick it up from 9th.
verse 9,
Right.
it reads, and Yehoah said unto Joshua, this day have I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you. Wherefore the name of that place was called Gilgal until this day. And the children
Okay,
of
that
Israel,
means that they still have some Israelites. They still have some Egyptian taint on them. I mean, we used to have to say in BINAH King that God used to have to say, Pharaoh, let my people go. And I'll reverse the thing. We say, today we had to say, my people, please let Pharaoh go. So this is what we used to say a lot in BINAH King, that the cry ain't going to the master that free the people. The cry is going to the people these days to free themselves from the master, which is a big difference. So those are things we're going to talk about. The 10th verse.
Verse 10,
10.
it reads, and the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal, and they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening in the plains of Jericho. And they did eat of the produce of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn, and the self same day. And
All right, now I'd like to bring out this thing. Hold it before we go forward. It's an important word, phrase that's used here. Makorat ha-Pesach. All right. So now all are supposed to be counting the Omer, and most times you count the Omer at night. So we're counting, 7 each Omer per day, and also by weeks. So we're counting days and weeks. So we supposed to be counting from. So our count starts from the second day of CHOKMAH. All right. So that means right then and there that after the second day, we start our count, and we count up to 50 days, 7 weeks, and plus 1 day. So 7 weeks, 1 day, and then we do individual days, which is, we say, 1 Omer, 2 Omer. Then when we get to 7 Omer, which is a mix in 1 week, then we can continue like that. And then we get to, 14 Omers, which make 2 weeks, and we do it like that. Some people believe that you only count from the Shabbat. So now, the biggest controversy, and that's why I want to pause here for a moment and speak on it, is that when is the right time to count for Shavuot, since that date is not given in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, which people tend to have problems with. And so what we learned from this particular thing is that when you counting, it says, they used in Leviticus, it says, Makorat Shabbat, which means the morrow after the Shabbat. But then when you go to Exodus, the 31st chapter, the 16th verse, the 17th verse, those that look, I'm not going there now, but I'm just saying, you'll find the word Shabbat mentioned twice. One as the day, and one where he rested, and refreshed himself. And a lot of times we say that in the prayer, the Shabbat is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. In 6 days, the Lord made the heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and ceased from his work. So, we use the term Shabbat, where you're not fash. All right. So when you say Shabbat, well, you're not fash, the word Shabbat means to cease. So if you think of the day where we cease from certain work and certain things, and we start to make a count, and then the word nafash is a unique word because it means soul. So that means that you're supposed to get the element of not only having your physical being rested, but your spiritual being as well as rested and united for the praise of the God, and dedicated to the Creator. So when you find this thing, it's the only term you find where you see makora, at Pesach, which is the same term that's used for makora hashabat. You don't find that term nowhere else in the scripture. So therefore, we count the second day of CHOKMAH, so Omer, until we reach that particular time, which always falls within the third month. All right. So I just want to point that out because we people that says, it's only one day called, the Shabbat, Ha Shabbat, but the word Shabbat itself is, even though there's the rest of them days is, most of them is called Shabbat time, let you know right there that we are, if you don't observe the Passover, you cut off from Israel. So it's serious enough to let you know that we had certain things to going on in that particular time. And then when they ate of the process of the produce of the land, normally you would have a wave offering the next day of the barley harvest, which I talked about a while back with the first fruits that was brought and made into loaves and brought it to Elisha. But so you had the barley harvest first, and then you had a wheat harvest second. What is important to understand is this: is that the barley harvest and the first piece of wheat is brought up at this particular time. All right. So and then the 12th verse is really important to consider as well. So you got the 12th verse, Chief.
Verse 12 reads, "And the manna ceased on the morrow, after they had eaten of the produce of the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna any more, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year." And
all right, then. Now, before we go forward, just something to consider. We know what day manna never comes down on. So now, what day is this Passover observance happen? We know that we had one that's just happened on the Shabbat, begin on the Shabbat, the first night of Passover. But we know manna don't come down on Shabbat anyway. So now, it's always a question: what was the Seder like for those people when they just entered the land that night, when they didn't eat of the produce of the land until the morrow after the Passover? So that's something to think about, because manna stopped only the day after that. After they ate the produce of the land, it said the next day manna ceased. So there's something to think about, So I'm not going to, waste time on a debate on it, but these are little nuggets here that make you say, okay, let me start dissecting and investigating. Darash, Midrash means to investigate. So we got to start investigating some of these things that we read here. All right. So we're going to read about the part where the 13th verse, go down to 13th verse.
Verse 13 reads, "And it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with the sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went unto him and said unto him, Art thou for us or for our adversaries?" Verse 14, "And he said, Nay, but I am a captain of the host of Yahweh. I am now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and bowed down and said unto him, What saith my Lord unto his servant? And the captain of Yahweh's host said unto Joshua, Put off thy shoe from off thy foot, for the place whereon thou standest is holy. And Joshua did so."
All right, hold on. Yeah, before we get there, because we only got 2 more verses to deal with. 2 more verses to deal with. Because we're going to go from 6:1 and then straight to 27. All right. So what we have here is this: another reminiscent of Moses' first encounter at the bush. When he seen the bush burning, And he said he turned this great sight. That was Moses himself, Moshe Rabbeinu, first encounter and an audience with the Creator. Now, here we know Joshua was told certain things by the Creator, but now this is going to be his first encounter with a celestial being at that particular time, and with a sword drawn out, outstretched. So the destroyer angel that we talked about in Egypt, that was going to destroy us if we didn't put the blood on the upper and 2 side posts, then that was for us, against us. Joshua knew the story. He was a disciple of Moshe. So he knew exactly all the ins and outs and the different meanings behind the Seder itself, or that first Passover. So now you see the same guy that looked like a destroyer. And he said, are you for us or for our enemies? And this angelic being, as we can assume, didn't say, I'm for you. He didn't say, I'm for your enemy. Is that as captain of the Lord of hosts am I, man? So what position do you take? So Moses said, all those on the Lord's sides. And then when they had the golden calf, and all the tribe of Levi pulled up on the Lord's side and said, take out the sword. So Joshua was there when that event went down. So here it is, after he showed himself to be humble, because said, well, whatever, if you come to the host of the Lord and you call out the tetragrammaton, the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the name that Moses said it was, then you got to be somebody I got to show respect to. And then he said, take off your shoes, because you stand on holy ground. Where was you standing before? So it's the recognition of where you at the time that counts the most. Because sometimes we be in a place that we don't recognize the sanctity of a place. Sometimes we don't even recognize the sanctity of the days we observe. But we're going to go from there and straight to the 27th verse of this particular chapter. Oh, but did we read the first verse of the 6th chapter?
No, we haven't read.
All right. The first, one verse in the 6th chapter.
Yeah, verse.
Oh, yeah. Go 6:1.
All right.
6:1.
We're in the book of Joshua, chapter 6, verse 1. And it reads, Now Jericho was straightly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in.
All right, skip over there to the 27th verse, because we always got to end somewhat on a good nurse. Yeah.
Of chapter 6.
27.
And it reads,
yeah, same chapter.
So Yahweh was with Joshua, and his fame was in all the land. Hallelujah.
All right. Hallelujah. See, basically that it ends on a good note, because the purpose is that Joshua encountered a celestial being, and he conquered one of the most hardest encounters he had, which was Jericho. And Joshua himself, you noticed that he was by himself, wondering how I'm gonna do this, how this gonna play out, but he's given a plan by the Creator what to do. And you say, well, how the sound's gonna make a wall go down? So when people live inside the walls of the city. So I hope you got something out of what I said. Any mistakes been in my own? I know I went through this kind of somewhat fast, I believe, but everybody enjoyed the holy days and discuss it with your various leaders and teachers. And any mistakes been my own, I say to you, CHOKMAH, it's a good festival season, and early Shabbat Shalom.
I do have a question. Do you have some time?
I got time. Retire life at some point decent.
So it's interesting, chapter 5, where you speak about no one ever brought that up, about the manna did cease, and on the morrow, after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn in the self-same day. They made that in the self-same day, right? Unleavened cakes and parched corn. So if that was the count, if that was the, let me see, how would I put that? The self-same day, the following day, no, but they say the morrow after the Shabbat, so it wouldn't. So for them, they would just, it would just
Tomorrow
be
after the Passover.
right after the
It was
Passover.
tomorrow after the Passover. You know,
Right,
and I'm saying so
right,
therefore that's an
right, right,
important point.
right. That's an important point. Right,
I pay stop. Whereas that's
right,
the only where the other time you find Mamakra is only Hashabbat in Leviticus 23.
right.
But there in
Absolutely.
Joshua, and then you know that is the Passover is called that, and that's why I wanted to make sure I showed that the Passover is called Chag HaPesach as well.
Absolutely.
So when you start to count, it's looked at it. And that's why I explained also that Shabbat means the day of the rest. So if you don't believe Shabbat is a day, it means to rest with the exact same word, exact same homonym.
Right.
So, and it's written, and that's why I gave Exodus 31st chapter, 34th chapter, the 25th verse, for people to read and look at, those that study Hebrew, and you'll see that Shabbat is written there twice, and all in reference to the Shabbat, and it's part of every prayer book too.
So my next question is this. You have some people that believe that you cannot drink wine during this time because wine is fermented. What do you have to say to someone like that?
Sourness, for something to be sour is not the comets. The comets come from those 5 grains, and they had to transform out those 5 grains. All right. Matter of fact, most wine is from a fruit. Now I know they got this. They might make wine or some, something like potatoes with vodka and stuff like that, and other elements and liquors. But what it's concerned with is the grain that grows and readily in the land of Israel, those 5 grains that I mentioned, and it's the actual same item from Kamas, and that's why I gave you the acronym for Kamas and Matzah, where the only difference is one is with a chait, now with a hey, and gave you a symbolic meaning behind it. But Kamas is the actual item that they have from the beginning that changes. Sourness, anything is sour. Now, do it taste good? No. You know what I mean? Because something blow up and swell up, it doesn't matter. That's not the Kamas. Because something rises, with heat, with air, that's not what's considered Kamas there. That's why when it comes down, even the drink offering, the priest had to pour it to the side of the altar. He couldn't get rid of it. But we know if it's something that's common, they're supposed to clear it out their borders, out your houses and out your borders. So even in the most holy spot, and when we bring up the loaves, which is when we get up to a Shavuot, those loaves has leavening in it, but they're eaten. They're not offered up anyway. It's a wave.
It's
they
just
only
a wave offering, right?
Right, but it's never going to the altar. And he tell you clearly, no leavening should be on the altar. So if wine was leavening, then why are you splashing it on the side of it?
So it's not talking. So it's not specifically speaking about fermentation.
Some sour.
It's not talking about fermentation. It's speaking about the sourdough, from those 5 grains only.
Right. Okay. Which I said was barley, wheat, oats, spells, and rye.
Okay.
And most people these days could buy matzahs made out of spelt, simply because they had this new sickness with this gluten-free stuff, whatever the case is.
Right.
So you can actually buy matzahs made out of spelt. Now I don't know how this new stuff come up, but they say in the book you get new diseases or whatever the case is. Because I didn't know any kid
people are allergic to gluten. Like
I understand about that.
Yeah, like.
But I'm saying when I was young,
like gastrointestinal. It's just like lactose. People are lactose intolerant. Some people don't know they lactose intolerant. They just keep eating it, drinking it, and they be all over the place. But some people are lactose intolerant, and some people can't. Some people break out when they eat gluten wheat. Wheat with gluten. Yeah.
I'm aware of that now, but I was saying how things change, because I didn't know any young guy that was allergic to peanut when I came up. And we was around a lot of guys, and peanut butter was a staple. because we got that free. It's not sustainable. But
Peanut
peanut
butter and
butter so
jelly.
thick that you can put whatever in there, and it'll stand there forever. In the center. So
Right.
and in school. So and it's just strange that how things change. But I guess they used to have ships of wood and men of iron, so now they got ships of iron and men of wood. So I guess
Right.
things change.
So where does that concept come from? That things like people saying there's a certain amount of time you have before you can eat your food, that sort of stuff. Do you know where that originates from?
Well, actually, those that now when about matzahs now I just focus on matzahs because it comes from the grain.
Right.
All right. The grain, when you add water to it, will ferment quicker than if you add juice. And I spoke about that earlier about what matzahs most people try to have on a Seder night, and that what's the difference between that kind of matzah and why they used the term lechem oni later on in Moses' time, bread of affliction, where it's not necessary that. And there's a big discussion on that too, but where it talk about not about the leavening, about something turning is 18 minutes. Shomor matzahs, what they call shomor matzahs that you buy in the store. One is invented by Manna, the square ones.
Right.
The shomor is mostly the round ones. Right, and they're watched. When water added on, they keep washing and wiping the table up. So and they have it from beginning to end, 18 minutes. That's why they're so thin. From beginning to end, 18 minutes. When it passed 18 minutes, they don't consider it kosher because then the leavening process will start. Now, and so shomor means to watch or guard it, from the word shomer, which means to guard it. So they guard the whole process from the time they get the flour to the time they blend it with the water to the time it hits to the mashed up in the dough to the time it goes to that thing and it hit the ovens really hot. Then that's it. It got to be cooked within 18 minutes. So that's what they're talking about when it comes to those grain when you're making the bread and dough. Now, when people might say, okay, that same dough once it's cooked, the unleavened matzahs, once it's cooked, fried, whatever it is, done, you say, okay, I'm gonna make a matzo ball soup, out of it, paste it up, whatever the case is, grind it up. It's already cooked, so now there's no chance of it's turning to leavening from that point on, because it's already roasted quickly. And also, that's one of the reasons why they roast the lamb, because it's as opposed to boiling it, because it had to be done quick. Because you only got a short window of time from start to finish to cook it completely and sit down and eat it and make sure nothing left over until the morning. That's why you had to roast it as well for a fast process. So the bread was done in a fast process, but and the eating at the first pace up, but after that, it's never in haste. There's another thing I'd like to bring out too. When I think about the redemption, because those that follow a Seder about Elijah's cup, to be that Seder table, those that follow a Rabbinic thing, they always thinking about, since that redemption happened around that particular time, and Israelites tend to, throughout history with Hezekiah and with Josiah, decide to, come back and try to start a new lease on life during Passover time. They say the redemption will be around, the time of Pesach, when Elijah come, and that's why they got the cup out and everything, etc., which I'm going too deep into the Haggadah. But redemption, Passover was all our days, the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 appointed times, has something to do with redemption, which is Pesach, sanctification, which is the time we stood before Mount Sinai, and rededication. Past is Yom Kippur, because we done built the golden calf in between all that kind of time, and now it's talking about Sukkot, and reminded that, of course, the children of Israel to dwell in booths. There's no need to be reminded to be in tents already in the wilderness. So so that's another question. When do we start doing it?
Right.
You know,
where does the concept of not eating beans and rice and those type of grains during Pesach come from?
I spoke earlier. I said the Ashkenazi custom, but what it is that they had more harvest seasons in Europe, so they would rotate the crops a little bit more. So now they have wheat, they might have beans, they might have some other crop, rice, whatever the case is, growing along with the wheat or the spelt or the rye. So when they rotate the crops, because we know rotation helps the soil a lot better, you know, when you change growing from this product here to the next product, and they figure that it's only become leaven when it's not when it's in the ground, when it's harvested from the ground. So what they do, you know, that they being extra stringent, they say, well, we don't want not a bit of leaven mixed up in it. So since we know we had this rotation system of crops, since they had 4 harvest seasons in Europe, a lot of places, because they had more rain going on. In Israel, you just had the early rain and the latter rain. So that's why they became more stringent. They know it wasn't comets. The danger was the comets being mixed with the beans or with the rice, you know, whatever the case like that. So that's why they avoid it, because of the rotation, but not because it's going to become comets. And that could be researched by anybody that want to look it up.
Okay, thank you. I think I ran out of questions. Well, for anyone that's on this stream that has any questions, feel free to put them on the comments below and on the chat, and Nasik will surely try to get back to you as soon as possible. So just remember,
and if I can answer it,
yeah, and if he could answer it. So, you know, those are some of the things that sometimes people have questions on. I'm trying to remember all of them, but I clearly can't remember all of them now. So thank you, Nasik, for your enlightenment and for the understanding and for the wisdom that the Most High God has granted you. We thank all of you for tuning in. May the Most High God bless you, and also wishing that He had blessed you during this season of Passover, during this time of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and we pray that the Creator will continue to be with each and every one of you. Shalom, shalom.
And I like to bring one more thing too. I like to say, don't get it confused with the Lord's Supper. You know, don't get it confused with it, even though they say traditionally